G'day guys and gal, Space Wolves are almost as good at dying as they are at killing. That isn't to say they are poor fighters, in fact there are very few other legions that can withstand the onslaught of the Space Wolves, as evident by how many times they've kicked Magnus's ass without the help of their Primarch. However, it does mean that they are often reckless, headlong charging into obscene battlefields while being outnumbered and outgunned, so it's pretty ironic that the oldest living Space Marine in the setting of Warhammer 40k is indeed a Space Wolf, Bjorn the Fell-Handed, a Space Marine so old that he remembers fighting alongside the Emperor. It also wasn't like Bjorn played it safe either. The dude charged into battle alongside his Primarch, his signature weapon being a lightning claw. So for him to still be alive in the current setting, he has to be one hell of a beast. Before we get started, we've all seen the incredible Space Wolf range refresh by now, which couldn't have come at a better time, as I am proud to release Bjorn the Space Bear, a legendary warrior of the rout, second only to the King of Wolves himself. He wields a mighty frost rune blade and has his entire hand replaced with a lightning claw, not to mention the two head variants, his badass Viking visage as well as a fierce looking helmet. As a fun fact, the earlier renditions of this model was actually inspired by Logan, but then GW released Logan, so we had to take a strategic pivot, which I'm actually very happy with. Coming up with a unique champion just in time to add a special flair to your new Wolfie army. As you can see, he has a bear pelt instead of the usual wolf pelt, as befitting his nickname, and he can be proxied into 40k as a champion or 30k as himself. Beyond the Space Bear and many other awesome major minis are available now for worldwide shipping. We even offer a pre-painted service where you can get your major minis pre-painted by a professional before they are sent to you, letting you pick a custom scheme and even the painting standard you want. So many options. Link is below. Today we'll go over the highlights of the legendary Bjorn, detailing his best moments rather than just the full lore retelling, which hopefully explains how he has survived so long despite getting involved in some of the deadliest battles in all of 30 and 40k. We can also explain why he's called the Fell-Handed. Let's get into it. Bjorn is the ultimate example of punching above his weight. The shit he has faced down and survived is bonkers. The man has fought a demon king of Khorne, a contempted Dreadnought, many traitor space marines including Terminators, and even punched on with Magnus the Red himself, not only surviving each encounter but often winning. The point I'm making is that Bjorn isn't a lucky guy. He's just such a beast in these situations that he manages to punch and hack his way out of them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Bjorn wasn't this prodigy warrior from a famed house and tribe. In fact, he only really got any attention near the end of the Great Crusade, and that was only really because he accidentally shot down an Imperial research craft and to rescue its crew out of a sense of obligated shame. Now, for whatever reason, GW authors can't seem to agree on the Space Wolves. I'm not just talking about style or tone differences, they literally accidentally retcon each other's work and timelines all the time. I don't know why this seems to only apply to the Space Wolves, but it makes my job a lot harder, so some of the feats of Bjorn's badassery I discussed likely won't be in chronological order, and that's okay. What really put Bjorn on the map was his duels with the Khornite Demon King, Arvax the Arch Slaughterer. Yes, that is a try-hard name, and yes, it's awesome. Now, before the Heresy, demons often did materialize and attack the Space Marine legions and their Primarchs. Some knew they were creatures of the warp, others thought they were spicy aliens, but no one knew the extent of chaos. The Space Wolves engaged in battle with Arvax and his Khornite demons, and Bjorn was horrified to see his pack torn to shreds, him as the last one left. Liam and Russ arrived to turn the tide, and usually what happens at this moment in the lore is that the legendary Space Marine warrior finds valiantly, is wounded, and then their Primarch saves them and defeats the big bad monster. Not in that case though. Bjorn bitch slapped the tits out of Arvax and caused him to retreat, enraging Bjorn, who wanted to avenge his packmates. His chance at vengeance would come 5 years later, where Arvax would re-emerge. Lehman also had a blood debt to collect from Arvax from slaughtering his sons, with both he and Bjorn swearing revenge and were now competing for Arvax's skull. When they engaged the Demon King in battle once again, Russ fought hard to reach Arvax, but was astonished to see Bjorn had beaten him to it. Instead of intervening, Russ watched his son duel Arvax and was amazed to see Bjorn duck a kill strike, climb up the monster's body, and then rip out its throat with his power claw. It was fucking epic. Now, old lore states this is how Bjorn got his nickname the Fell-Handed, because he used his hand to rip out a fell creature's throat, but new lore explains it differently, but we'll get to that later. With these deeds, alongside Russ's rune priest speaking of Bjorn as a strange omen, Russ decided to keep Bjorn close, like a weird luck charm. Space Wolves are strange like that. A lot of wolf lords and high-ranking wolves were a bit pissy that Bjorn, some lowly member of the rout, was now apparently the Primarch's shadow and second, but there wasn't really much they could do about it, especially since Russ didn't even give Bjorn an official promotion until much later. Now, as a bit of a cute note, the Imperial scientist Bjorn shot down and then saved was planted with knowledge to speak Fenrisian. However, as he wasn't a native speaker, he fucked up Bjorn's Bjorn's name and started calling him Bear, a cute mistake Bjorn didn't correct, but a mistake that would end up saving Bjorn's life. See, during the fall of Prospero, Tzeentch had sent an agent, soul linked to the scientist Bjorn saved, to ensure things would play out as Tzeentch desired. It's implied that this agent was the Changeling. During the fall of Prospero, the Changeling turned into Horus and hunted the scientist, with Bjorn and his new packmates arriving to save his scientist buddy. However, the demon, via its link to the scientist, knew the names of each packmate and used their names to subdue them, as there is power in names, and this demon was a master of using that power. However, when it tried to subdue Bjorn, Bjorn ignored it and cut off its arm, as the demon only knew him as Bear, not Bjorn, due to the scientist's mistranslation. However, the demon was still mighty and set Bjorn's arm on fire with Eldritch Flame, a flame that would consume Bjorn. However, the scientist cut Bjorn's arm off to stop its spread and he saved his life. Then the Sisters of Silence arrived and the demon got its ass beat. So yeah, Bjorn is likely one of the only entities in the galaxy to humble the Changeling, alongside the Watchers in the Dark. This is also the canon reason why Bjorn gained the name the Fell-Handed, because his arm was set aflame by a demon and had to get it cut off. In even more contradiction, other lore stated that a Thousand Sun sorcerer set his arm on fire and Valdor himself cut it off, but this scene with the Changeling and the Scientist is directly from the Heresy novels, which I consider to be extremely undeniably canon. It also helps that when Bjorn was looking for an augmetic to replace his lost arm, he found a master-crafted, potentially even Dark Age of technology prosthetic lightning claw that was actually meant for a different space wolf, but he was like, fuck it, and stole it. He originally used the lightning claw to begin with, so it was a perfect fit. The lightning claw was devastating, able to cut through ceramite and shielding like a 9,000-degree knife through a toddler, and he would get to use it soon after gaining it during a large fleet battle with the Alpha Legion. Bjorn ran through the corridors of their capital ship, ripping Alpha Legion Terminators to shreds. The only thing that he ended up struggling against was an Alpha Legion contempted Dreadnought, which yeah, fair enough, those things are a pain. Bjorn managed to survive it for a time, until Russ arrived and destroyed it. Considering Contemptors crush space marines like ants, this is an impressive feat all by itself. Bjorn wasn't just a beast warrior though, he was also extremely wise, having his own free-thinking mind. Russ relied heavily on him for counsel, and he managed to keep Russ from falling into despair on multiple occasions. When Russ got fucked on by Horus and the wolves were chased down and forced into an apparent last stand on Yarant, Russ gave Bjorn his spear and told him to lead the Legion. Now Primarch weapons are fucking big, heavy, and are rarely wieldable by space marines, but Bjorn managed it and cut down scores of traitors with it, before wisely accepting Corax's offer of rescue and saving his Legion and Primarch. This more or less marked the end of Bjorn's Heresy lore, but really was only the beginning of his true lore. After the Heresy, Russ made Bjorn a part of his Wolf Guard, but then he took all of his guards, minus Bjorn, into the Eye of Terror, seeking a way to heal the Emperor. Bjorn was devastated to be left behind, but Russ didn't do it because he didn't want Bjorn by his side, he did it because he wanted Bjorn to lead the Wolves, making him the first ever Great Wolf of the chapter. Bjorn led the chapter into countless victories, until he was eventually cut down in battle and placed into a Dreadnought. Not just any Dreadnought though, but a highly custom, one-of-one extremely advanced Dreadnought. It had all the defenses and protections of the classic box Dreadnought, but also with startling speed and agility, more so than any other Dreadnought of its size and shape. It was more akin to a Contemptor than a box boy, and of course they gave him his iconic claws, now much larger and deadlier than they had been in life. Now there have been Dreadnought chapter masters in the past, and Bjorn didn't immediately vacate his position. In fact, he stayed active and awake for 500 years. However, the burden of being a Dreadnought eventually takes its toll, and Bjorn began needing to go into long sleeps to recover, allowing a new Great Wolf to emerge. Bjorn would now only be awoken when the need was dire, or once every 1,000 years to tell of the chapter's history of the Space Wolves. It would have been difficult, waking up to find almost every brother you had now gone, and 1,000 new faces looking to you for guidance. The first time Bjorn woke was in less ideal circumstances. Magnus and the Thousand Suns had invaded Fenris, partially because they hate the Space Wolves, but mostly to try and stop the Space Wolves from creating successive chapters. Because Magnus is a little bitch, he waited until most of the chapter was off-world before attacking, with only one great company garrisoning the world. Bjorn was awoken and was mad as fuck, with his tactical sense being invaluable. When Magnus himself appeared, Bjorn was ready to throw down. He shot Magnus, blew him up, stabbed him, and really did a number on him. Magnus remarked that he hadn't been that hurt since the Heresy. Magnus did eventually rip both of Bjorn's arms off and disable him, but Bjorn had distracted the Crimson King long enough for the rest of the Space Wolves to return to Fenris and fight the Thousand Suns off. Bjorn would again be awoken to sort out a diplomatic crisis, where the Space Wolves and Grey Knights were at war and were killing each other. The bloodshed only ceased when Bjorn woke up and cracked the shits, spanking both the Inquisition and his own chapter for being naughty, before making them shake hands and back off. Bjorn was seen as such a revered figure and legend that even the Grey Knights bowed to him, something Bjorn thought was retarded. If you weren't already convinced of Bjorn's badassery, his soul is so ancient, powerful, and noble that even while asleep, his soul battles demons in the warp who attempt to materialize on Fenris, since Fenris does have wounds in reality that leak the warp onto it. The civil war between the Inquisition and the Space Wolves was the last time we've seen Bjorn as far as I'm aware, but with the Space Wolf range refresh, I bet we'll see our badass boxy boy very soon. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up Bjorn the Space Bear, the latest and greatest major mini that you can even get pre-painted as a part of our service. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more bearish content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.